Yeah.
Welcome. Wait, no, never mind. It's Jed's turn to do the intro.
Oh, not again. All right. Welcome back to the Hit Factor podcast. I am Jedidiah Morgan, joined by a beard and a mustache, and attached to the beard is Saul Allen, and attached to the mustache is Beal. And we are going to talk about some shooting stuff. Hopefully some training, some matches, what's been going on in life recently. So
Yeah,
that's as much as I've got. You guys are gonna have to take it from here, but
that was really good. You were right, Saul. He'd been thinking about it. Solid.
I'm bummed Saul doesn't have the mustache anymore though.
No, it's that.
It's still there. It's just in context.
It's just surrounded by more hair.
I never thought that I would be associated with a mustache, and now it's happened, and I don't mind. I don't mind.
I genuinely had no idea that Jay was going the mustache route. Like, there was inklings of that when I saw a picture of him in October or November, but I just thought he was being lazy. And so then when I saw him in December and he had the full mustache, the same time I had the full mustache, I thought, great. People are going to be like, there goes Saul, trying years late to be like Jay again. So I was like, nope, beard's coming back. Can't do it.
I now see. I have unintentionally blocked a Saul stash permanently, forever. Like there's no. That's disappointing. I didn't because I did not realize that.
Did you watch Magnum PI as a kid? Is that like the influence?
No, I watched it for inspiration, obviously, but
Yeah, okay.
but no, I didn't. I did.
Tom Selleck's got nothing on you.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Oh man, we are all gonna I'm just ever since this plan was hatched, not by me, but I was quick to jump on board with it. Was this plan to shoot a bunch in good weather with Jed and Saul, and I was like, I've been thinking about it, and I'm training so that I can be prepared to train, and it's like, I don't know, it's one of the best things, and so I don't know, we got all of our stuff ready to go pretty much. We just have to get there.
Yep, ammo's here. I got stacks and stacks of ammo in the kitchen.
So great.
You should have some targets and some pasters too.
Oh yeah. I forgot about those. I have those too.
You just got a swinger?
Yeah, I got to tell you guys about that. So I did buy a swinger, but it turns out it's a pretty slow swinger. So I got to see if I can rig something up like a heavier counterweight or something
Oh,
to What's that?
I got you. I've been messing with swingers for years now. We'll make it fast.
Okay, good.
We can also make
Good.
We can do a bunch of things. I'm optimistic.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, either way, we're gonna have a swinger. It just might be a slow swinger, but we can still get creative with that.
We can still put it
It's
at 45 yards.
yeah. Yeah, because I can hit open targets at 45 yards.
You're going to hit like my weird turtle helmet no-shoot partial target at 45 yards, guaranteed.
I'll hit some part of it. It might be in the white, but I'm gonna be on there for sure.
Jay knows what my target looks like.
I created
that alpha zone, and then you cover up the top with a folded up no-shoot the other way.
This goes away, and then it's just like that bottom. Yeah. I was gonna shoot that today, but it was 13 degrees and windy. So I decided I might shoot it tomorrow or the next day.
Yeah, it was 65 and there was a cloud in the sky, so I decided not to go out today.
Yeah. Oh well. It's terrible.
Yeah.
So we're just talking like anybody else has any context for what we're saying, but we had hatched a plan a while back that those of us who live in cold places would like to go to somewhere warm early in the season and do some very focused training. And those who live in warm places were gracious enough to host us for that, with the idea that training with other people who take training seriously has a lot of benefits, and it can be pretty hard to come by. But that's the context.
Yeah, and I think that has been, I mean, Saul, you and I have trained together, but it hasn't been for a duration of time, like 2 days in a row even, of training together. And it's always been, like for a very brief amount of time. Even, we're close enough where we can drive and shoot with each other, but it hasn't happened near as frequently as would be really nice. And to do this with like a small group and with someone like Jed too, which Jed, like, you're really fast, and we want that, you know? And
Yeah, right. You're way faster than me at this point.
well, like, I don't know, the idea of being around people who want the same things, like who just want to get better, is powerful. And in the sense of volume too, I want to shoot a lot of volume in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
And we've talked about a bunch of this stuff, kind of either recording or not, but the volume in a short amount of time in this kind of place in the season is something that I want. So that I was thinking about it today. I want it for a lot of reasons, but so that in the future I can kind of replicate this on my own, where I can pick, 2 or 3 days I was planning out ammo today too, on where I can pick 2 or 3 days where I will shoot, 3 sessions of live fire and shoot 1,000 or 1,200 rounds in a day, and do that a couple days in a row. And I want to learn a little bit about how to do that. And I think this is like the perfect opportunity for me to learn that.
There's something I'm 100% certain I took from Steger at some point about one of the benefits of training being thinking about training, and planning training sort of has its own benefit in terms of self-diagnosis for what kind of deficits or what kind of strengths do I want to build on, and how am I going to use this time. And so planning this trip for a few months, I have had that benefit where in my dry fire, in my live fire, I'm thinking about, well, I want to maximize this opportunity I have for this little training camp. And so it's given sort of shape. And so I'm benefiting from it. I'll be in Florida for whatever, 4 days, but I'm benefiting from it months in advance of that.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I've definitely felt that.
Yeah, and I'm super excited just to shoot with you guys, purely just to, because I know there's going to be things where just like getting fresh ideas and fresh like approaches to things, because it's so easy to get in a rut and just end up just doing the same thing over and over. So I'm really excited just to get some fresh perspectives for sure. It's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, that's another big part of it too, because I don't know. I mean, because I haven't trained with a lot of other people, and so to get,
Me neither.
I
Yeah.
mean, to get from you as well, stuff that you like, ways that you naturally set things up or do whatever. I don't know. I mean, like, I'm very open minded to this whole thing, but obviously I have specific things that I also want to work on, and
But the idea that I can just show up at a range and Jed will set up something that would be something he would work on, and then I can just go with that and figure out how I'll benefit from it. To me, that's exciting.
yeah,
Again, I don't have that normally. Even and I do shoot with other people up here with some frequency, and they're lovely people. And for whatever reason, maybe it's the strength of my personality, we end up doing whatever I'm doing most of the time. And I've shot with Jay a couple times where we've done what Jay is doing, and that's really, really valuable to show up and do what somebody else is doing, and so you sort of start from an unknown point of departure instead of from a very familiar one.
yeah. And I've also done, like, we've trained together enough where you have set up, and there's like a certain degree of discomfort that comes with that, because it's unknown, and that's always valuable, like always. Um,
I also like the idea of. Oh, go ahead.
I don't want to break the magic with it, but I'm also curious. I don't think we can. I'm curious about what you guys have been thinking about in that sense of what if you're going to set something up, what you're going to set up, or what you're going to. Well, I
Go for it, Jen.
more the principles of like what you want to work on, not like, oh, I'm going to put this fault line here and then put this target at 12.5 yards, that thing. Like what, just like the principles of what you have been thinking about training. I mean, we've talked about this before, but yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, I haven't given it too much like super specific thought because I kind of was thinking it would just kind of like happen. Like I assumed that it would kind of just happen naturally. Like we'd get out there and ideas would start getting thrown around, and then something awesome would come of that. So I haven't like thought too much into specifics, but um, that's a good question. I mean, I bought the Swinger specifically because I was curious about your guys' approach to that because I feel like I'm still kind of lacking in the moving target department for sure. So like some fast over the top stuff and like kind of seeing and playing with like what's possible there. Because that's something I've never like I don't own it. I haven't ever owned a Swinger and like I literally never train on them.
Yeah,
So I was super. What's that?
you've just shot him at matches basically to.
Yeah, literally just shot them at matches.
Yeah,
So I finally broke down and spent the money. So like I was super excited to play with that because I know like Jay, like I know you do a lot with moving targets. So to pick your brain on some of that stuff, like outside the context of a match would be super cool.
yeah,
And I know that's like one tiny aspect of training for sure, but that's kind of like what I'm most excited about is to pick your brain on some of that stuff for sure.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I every single time I set up a Swinger, it's one of the most exciting sessions that I have because I'm like, oh, cool. Now here's the strategy that I thought was perfect, and I'm gonna modify it
Y-
because there's so much to be learned, and because they're all different. I don't know. Yeah, so that's yeah. I was gonna bring that up on you, like you got a Swinger, so that must mean something.
Yeah, yeah, and that's exactly why. Like, yeah, and it's also like I had some struggles with the like I want to set up kind of what I struggled with a little bit in the IPSC Extreme match that I just shot. And yeah, I figured we can set up something very similar to that. And I just want to play with that a bunch more because obviously, like during a stage, you're not really, I mean, yeah, you're picturing how it's going to go in the walkthrough, but like, yeah, I would love to actually play with that more and like see what I can actually get away with because I've never gotten to just hammer on that
Yeah, you never.
for any extended amount of time.
Yeah, been in a position where you're just like, oh, let me just see what I can get away with on this.
Yeah,
Because
exactly, which is horrible. I mean, that's so like looking back, like I should have done this so long ago because it's like it's a big that's a big area where you can lose time and points, and I've just been neglecting it. So I'm really excited for that.
It's actually one of the single best places to separate on a stage, and because Jay has spoken about this with other people, and he and I have spoken about this offline a lot, but it insures against itself. If you do something on a moving target faster and you make an error, you still have the exact same option to clean it up.
Hmm.
Barring penalty targets on movers, barring no shoots on movers. But for any other mover, if you make a mistake doing it faster than you're comfortable, you have the option to clean it up doing it at the speed you're comfortable, which is not true for any other target. Right? So whether you're talking about taking it in one pass instead of two, or sort of taking on more risk prior to transitioning to the Swinger or leaving on it, etc. But basically, it's one of those situations where anything you can accomplish on it is sort of insured. There's a built-in insurance in terms of you're saving however long it takes for it to re-expose.
yeah, yeah, and to have a lot of understanding when you see a Swinger is valuable, and like just in it by itself, because that becomes it no longer is a distraction on the rest of the stage. It's just an understanding. So then the rest of the stage can be uh, just planned out as it is, and the whole stage can just be shot.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
I
any
know, I
unfamiliar
know.
element.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
that's why I've always found so much. I mean, I do like training things that are weird, but just joy in training weird things because of that element, that I can become comfortable with them. And then if there's some like tiny thing that's recognizable at a match, then I can grab that and just kind of go with it. Like I have a door in a frame just to open. It's not down here right now. This was something years ago. And actually, my brother, he helped build that up, and he helped build a stomp pad that I still have, that we were activating a swinger that we both made. Like within the first year that we shot a match, we were like, "What is that swinger thing?" Like, we'll build one of those. And I don't know.
Yeah, well, you got to put it to use. I mean, IPSC Nationals in Arizona and CO Nationals both had doors, right? So
Yeah,
it's good training.
yeah, the door. Yeah, and it's not like, because I get the thing. It's like everyone knows how to open a door, but also if you open the door with a gun in your hand like that, that's a little bit more like not everybody does that every day.
Yeah, and also just if nothing else, training to not DQ there is also important.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. I think the first
Yeah.
time I opened a door, it was an indoor match, and the RO was like, I might have just done it quickly, but he was like, "You got to watch your hand there." Like after the stage was done, he was like, "Oh, your hand was close." And then that was a thing for me. I was like, "Oh, I better get good at that."
Is
Yeah.
that the door you brought to the Augusta match?
It was. Apparently, I didn't train on it right. That is the door.
Yeah. So the story that's missing there is Jay and his brother Nick built the door and then brought it to matches.
Yeah.
Like, this is now a door stage, guys.
Yeah, this is first stage. Obviously, I've done that with other props as well. Like Saul, you had this idea of like, we need a slider thing, so you pull a rope on this side, and then a door opens on that side, so we can force one-handed shooting. This was before the rule change, and so we built that and brought it to a couple matches, or one. Maybe it was just one.
Just the one indoor, but I mean, it was a dramatically too difficult stage. I think you shot it in 27 seconds, and I shot it in 34 seconds, and the next fastest time was like 45. I mean, it was too much.
Was it like, it was like three per with tiny, those like rubber pieces of steel that fall down to at distance. It's really funny. Good stage. It was a terrible stage.
So
It's probably on your YouTube.
It is.
So the thing I really, just so I don't lose the thread, the thing I really wanted to do from this, specifically with the two of you guys there, is I want to set up things I can't do, and then through the course of a couple hours, become able to do them. Because I think a lot of my training for the last couple of years has been trying to get better at doing things I can do. And I think there's a lot of value to identifying the thing I can't do. So that can be distance or difficulty or leans, but that can also be time, right? I mean, it can be sort of a minimum speed threshold for a certain set of targets. Like, how can I, do this in this amount of time, or how can I hit that thing that's 50 yards away consistently, and identify a thing I can't do, work on it for a little bit, and then I can do it.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, so I have had these things written down. I put them in an organized place for myself. But yeah, I want to work on elements of like a full stage in some kind of way. And that to me means like these things that I've been training now, which is, shooting probably laterally on the move. And then, the idea of pre-aiming before and what that looks like, and kind of into positions and things like that. And then this gets into like the swinger stuff, like mini stages where there are elements that are tested. Like maybe it's really hard leans, shooting partials and random stuff. Maybe it's shooting a swinger, an activator sequence there, and getting that in on a hard lean. I don't know, combining just different things. And then like what you brought up, the hosing stuff, like I have classifier goals that I'm curious on making, and generally those are kind of hosey stuff. So that's time based. And then it gets to like the distance stuff where I really want to like I want to put partials at 40 and 50, and I would really like to shoot a swinger at 40 or 50, and in all kind of arrangements. And so I don't know. There's a lot of stuff I want to do, but that's a little bit of it.
Which I will warn you guys, we should be good. So a few of the bays are big enough to where like if we put things on a diagonal, we should be able to get close to like 40, 45. I don't know if we're gonna quite get 50, but we should be able to get close.
It's okay.
But just so you know, we might not quite be getting 50, so we'll see.
Severely disappointed if we don't.
We'll
Yeah.
just do half scale at 40.
Yeah, that's true.
That's brutal. Yeah, half scale at 40. Yeah, I don't know. Just a bunch of stuff that also when we're like, there's the idea of training with someone where I'll experience it myself when I'm shooting or working on something where I don't know what's happening, and obviously like if you're shooting with other people and they're mildly paying attention, then they'll probably notice what's happening before you do, in some circumstances. And so obviously that kind of benefit that will just show up naturally is interesting to me.
Oh, I want you guys to tear me to shreds. No mercy.
Oh,
I'll
I
be
want
honest
I
with you.
want to.
That's just, I don't even have a little bit of that in me. Like, I mean, like I'm there for me, and you guys are super cool, and I'm gonna get inspired by how well you can do things. But I just don't have the coach in me. Like that's just,
you
it's just not.
you know how brutal I am with everybody, right, Jed? Like
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Jay is a very sharp critic. If you make a mistake long enough, which is typically 2 or 3 days of continuously making the mistake, he'll gently suggest to you that you might want to think about it. I think Jay's given me like 3 tips ever, and they were all like glaring things that were just at a certain point painful for him to stay silent about.
Yeah. You only mention it when it starts to hurt you worse than the other
it's
person.
about me.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Well, there will be plenty of opportunities for that.
I mean, so the things I'm hearing are things that I can't conceive of getting enough of. One is shooting more aggressively while moving laterally, including on partial targets. Does that mean that's going to be my strategy every time I have that opportunity in a match? Of course not. But would I like that to be available to me and to be a comfortable option where I can, or even if it's an uncomfortable option, an option where I know I can do it, out to kind of unreasonable distances and unreasonable partials. And Jay and I have spoken about this a little bit, but just like with the swinger, if you're in motion instead of the targets being in motion, certain changes have to happen. And I think the best way for me to learn what those changes are is to experiment. So shooting swingers with a lot of different exposures and a lot of different speeds, for me, I start to intuitively understand swingers. Now, that's not evidenced on the baseball stage at IPSC Nationals or on the swing and steel stage. But I will say, other than that, at a major match in the last 3 years, I haven't struggled on a swinger. Like, I get good hits, and when I get bad hits, I know about it. And I think that's because I have access to swingers at the club that I shoot at. And I've taken the time to sort of set them up at different distances and different speeds, and then just sort of intuitively learn kind of the timing and the sense that comes from that. And I haven't done that, moving really aggressively on them, laterally, in part because it feels wasteful to me because I will make so many mistakes. And if I put a tuxedo at whatever distance and I shoot it laterally, moving really aggressively, at a certain point, I have so many black holes on that target. It's like, oh, my body just rejects that and I start slowing down. And so I would like to be in an environment where you or Jay keep doing that at that high level and sort of demanding more from yourself. So then I'm kind of inspired to not slow down.
Yeah, I think, I mean, for me, not, slowing down at this phase for me, and this phase has lasted 3 years now. Slowing down is thrown out the window, and so this, it applies to a lot of stuff, but I'm really excited about continuing to push that. And then that will be, I'll put it on Jed this time. Jed, don't allow me to slow down, and then maybe something out for you.
All right. Well, yeah, we'll try to push each other. I'll do my best.
If you accidentally shoot it better than Jay, he will notice. Then his eyes will open wide, and he will have to shoot it better. Just putting that out there. A couple of times I've been shooting with Jay, and he's like, "Wait, what was your time on that?" And like you see, like the gears whirring, and then he goes and he knocks a second off of it, and he's like, "Oh man, I must have been holding back."
Especially on, I mean, like I'm particularly interested in this, and I know everyone is different, but especially on, and I've talked about this a handful of times in the last couple of years, but the first run on, it more applies to the first run on like a mini stage or like a larger exercise where I want to hit my fastest time on my first run, or I want it to be hard to beat where I don't beat that time within the next 2 or 3 runs. That kind of thing, just to make sure that I make decisions that give me what I wanted from the beginning. Now, obviously, you sometimes find things, but like that's part of what I'm trying to do, which has been valuable.
Do you have other specific things other than swingers that came out of your recent match?
Man, so many things. So there's kind of like a backstory. I don't want to explain too much, but coming out of the Florida State match, I I had some issues on my last stage of the match there. Basically, um, yeah, ended up running dry on a couple of mini poppers at like 15 and 20 yards. And yeah, that was not a good way to end that match. So, kind of had that in the back of my mind the whole match for this extreme. And yeah, just like with the lower round counts or the a lot of the 12 round stages and then 15 round mags, it's like that was that was kind of in the back of my mind a lot. So it's like I let that really slow me down and make me shoot scared. Yeah, so again, like I feel like it's always the same thing, but just realizing realizing kind of like what Jay said, like slowing down just isn't an option if you want to do it. Like we're trying to, like you said, win the game of hit factor. And yeah, I just I forgot that quite a bit at this match. Because I was just bleeding time all over the place. And it's like I I don't really know where I'm going with this, but like kind of like what Jay said, like just making the yeah, like I liked what you said, making the decisions of how to be as like fast and aggressive as possible right off the bat. And like that is the only option. Like there is no safe option because the safe option is you might as well just throw a mic anyway because you shoot the safe option and you're already losing. So it's like I definitely lost sight of that during this match. And like it's easy to blame the the 15 round mags, but it's like I really am kicking myself more for not just like going for it more and kind of shooting scared the whole time. So anyways, I don't know where I'm going with this other than just really trying to like cement in my mind that like there is no safe option. Like you have to just go for it. Like you have to go for it and whatever happens happens, but you have to at least like give yourself a chance of doing well. Because if you
Yeah,
don't, you might as well just be shooting mics and running dry on poppers anyway, because it doesn't matter. You know?
yeah. What I really want to do is, and this, I don't think this is necessarily the solution, but it's the way that I have framed it recently. And I think that this will come up a little bit and then it'll drift away and I won't need it anymore. But I want rules that I make myself do when a certain situation comes up, where it's like, oh, there's this activating sequence and I have to take it this way. So there's my
Mhm.
rule is that, um, and and Saul brought that up too. You know, if there's a swinger that I can know, where I know that I will be able to tell where the shots went in one pass, then I will do that. Like, these are the kind of rules that I want to put in place. And the same applies for, this is a partial target that I can take on the move. I will do that. When that connects me to another position. Like, so they're very loose and they're situationally dependent, but those are the decisions that I want to make on my first runs on things, which obviously first runs are what we matches. So that's interesting.
So it's funny, listening to you guys, I was thinking, oh, there's two different things. And then listening to Jay, I'm like, oh, there's actually one thing. So I was thinking there's two different things. One is about like sort of a global attitude and like not shooting scared and like an approach. And then the other is sort of Jay's almost strategic discussion of like, what can I do to maximize hit factor in this moment? And then listening to Jay just then, it's like, no, that's actually the same conversation, right? So telling myself I'm going to be globally more aggressive, et cetera, what does that mean? That means nothing. But approaching a context, whether it's a drill, an exercise, a mini stage, you know, a 32-round field course, approaching it and looking for decision points where you can do things that are things you can do, which is, again, circular. But it's not, oh, if I shot all of those at a dead sprint, it would be faster. Yes. Unfortunately, I can't shoot any of the dead sprints. So that's not an interesting proposition. But if the barrier is fear as opposed to capacity, then having a rule in place that the fear doesn't get to make the decision.
Yeah. And it's funny because the default one, because that's what I started at, was I'm going to add this mental aggression to everything, and that's like, that for me that was somewhat effective, but it wasn't all of it. Like, there was still a ton left over because the decisions were not clear. It was just decisions with more mental aggression, which was good for me personally, but it didn't take the biggest chunk of time savings that is there, like, possible, because that it kind of just flattened everything. And so that's where the decision making gets interesting.
And not that A being different techniques is where there's a lot, but there is a level of experimentation or exploration where you actually know what those decisions manifest. And like the really obvious one is, let's say you're moving really aggressively. Do you bring your arms in or leave them out? Well, that's very context specific. And how far are you going? And what are you doing? Of course. But unless you shoot that in a bunch of different contexts, you don't have that information.
Yeah.
And when you don't have the information, if you're like me or most people, you'll do what feels either safest or fastest, or, you know, and there's no guarantee that what feels fastest, a lot of the times what feels fastest to me is what's busiest. It's like the thing that has the most effort or the most elements, but it doesn't score better. I don't get more hit factor for being busier, for like taking on more different things. And I have to create contexts where I can sort of intimately know how those decisions play. And I think that comes from exploration. Like that, I can do that dry fire, I can do that live, but I can't just do that at the level of strategy, because like that strategy doesn't exist in a neutral context.
I'm thinking about strategy again, and this was one of the questions I had for you, Jed, about this most recent match. And I don't remember if you talked about it before, but were you looking at scores with this? Were you looking at your scores? I mean, because there were so many stages, and I was looking at scores. Saul was definitely looking at scores. Were you paying attention to that during the day?
Not so much during the day, just because the schedule I was shooting, there wasn't a lot of overlap
Yeah.
between like the people I was trying to like look at. But I was definitely checking at the end of the day for sure. I mean, if there was a certain stage where I felt like I didn't have a good idea of like how people were approaching it, I would look and just kind of see like ballpark time and stuff like that. But I wasn't specifically like tracking anyone or anything like that. It was such a long match and 3 long days. Like it was, I kind of let that go out the window, to be honest. Just because it was taxing, man, to be honest. Like, because there was, so So it was me, Tony Mazza, my friend Brandon, and then four just Canadian open shooters that we had never met before. Turned out to be an awesome squad, great guys, and we were getting through stages really fast. But we ended up getting stuck behind this big squad, and man, we would get iced for like an hour almost every stage. Like we would shoot two 12-rounders, go to the next bay, and just be sitting there like literally with enough time to like go walk around, like go to the bathroom, maybe go back to the car, get food. Like it was crazy. So like
Uh,
it was kind of a battle just to stay in it, to be honest. I know that doesn't answer your question, but no, I wasn't. By the end, I wasn't really paying that close of attention to scores. I was just trying to shoot everything the best I could.
when you did look ahead at other scores that were existing on stages that you hadn't shot yet, you mentioned like time and stuff. Were you looking at hit factor on them at all, or were you looking at any of that?
A little bit, but it was kind of hard to tell because like some of them were getting so blown out, honestly. It was like, man, I don't know, like yeah, it was just I wasn't paying that much attention, to be honest, because a lot of it was like, okay, well, especially like if if Griffel and JJ had gone through, it was like, man, I don't know what, like I don't know if I can even come close to matching that. I know that's a terrible attitude, but it's like some of the hit factors were just crazy. It was like, man, I don't know. Like I'm just gonna shoot
So
this
what's
the
the
best I
number that
can.
gives you that pause? Is there a specific hit factor that when you see it, it gives you pause?
Or was it the comparison to the rest of the field, or what were you thinking?
It was comparison to the rest of the field.
Well, no
Yeah,
one.
for sure.
Yeah, it's literally it's just you guys there, you know.
Yeah,
So
the
you're
way, right.
there's
Yeah, no, but
field.
yeah, it was hard to tell because stuff was just getting blown out. I mean, there were so many stages where it was like, uh, from 90 to 100%, there was just nobody there, and it was like, man, I don't, you know what I mean? So it's not like CO Nats where there'll be like 10 people stacked all, within a couple percent. Or at least that wasn't what I saw at the time
You'd
looking
have
at
to
at stages,
imagine them there and then put yourself in there.
Right.
You'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, this is actually like if everyone was here at this match, then this would not be as it appears.
Right.
That's my thought right now because I'm obviously I didn't shoot it. Um, I don't know. Yeah, that's interesting though. Yeah, I have not heard anyone talk about that kind of element before on the looking ahead at stages and seeing the separation as
Yeah, no, I mean it was like there were definitely some stages where I'm just like, wait, that's possible? Like that actually happened? It's like wow. It was kind of eye-opening for sure. Like those 12 rounders, like they kind of they kind of hurt me for sure. Like they were, and again, it's like the mag thing, like because a lot of them, I mean, so many swingers, probably 15 plus swingers at least in that match, probably more, 15 to 20. Um, so I mean, there was some pretty challenging 12 rounders for sure, like some far, like 20-yard IPSC plates and stuff like that. And yeah, that was definitely the 12 rounders, man, were killing me. Because I was like, we were debating reloads in places, and it's like, I think we're just gonna just go for it. Like, you might have some makeups on this plate, but like, yeah, it was tough. I wasn't prepared for this match, to be perfectly honest. It kind of, yeah, it opened my eyes a little bit to IPSC for sure.
I'm gonna blame Tony and Brandon for this, which is convenient because they're not here to defend themselves. But I think there's a squad dynamic that also happens for a lot of us, where depending on what the sort of vibe is, you pick up either on people's enthusiasm or their fears, and then they become they magnify. And so if somebody brings up oh wow, there's a couple of small plates, we're not going to have any makeups, and then that becomes the filter that the stage is interpreted through is, oh, this is a high risk stage because we only have these 15 round magazines. And that, I'm not saying that's what happened for you guys, but I've had this exact conversation with people, and I absorb their fears. And then they become my fears. And then it becomes the filter that sort of the squad as a whole, it's like, oh, this particular sequence isn't possible. And so then just nobody does it.
Yeah.
And then like later on, you see like a third of the match did that sequence, including many people who are your exact peers. And you're like, oh, really? I talked myself out of that.
I always have to remind myself on, especially, I mean, specifically when it comes to the round count thing, on how many times I've actually been burned by, you know, the round count, like running out. And even if I was shooting tight, you know, like really tight, where I have one makeup, and that kind of thing, and I'll have to use this as my background to make this decision, especially when there is fear being tossed around, like, oh yeah, I'd always do a load. I mean, like on Super Squad at Nationals, oh, always do the load. You just do the load. People are talking about that, and I have to be like, okay. I specifically think of Saul at one point saying like, no, the load always costs something. So I'm like, the load costs something, and so then I'll be like, all right, I'm not going to load. And what reminds me is that I've been burned like one time, and it wasn't even that bad because then I just did another reload, and it was fine. And so it hasn't been that many times, and so yeah, the load always costs something, and it's just, it's back to the thing.
Yeah, and that was just like I haven't really struggled with that too much in the past, but it was just so fresh in my mind from having had that issue at the
Yeah,
Florida State match. And I man, I wish I could sit here and say that I just put that behind me and it didn't affect me, but it totally affected me. Like my confidence on tighter, harder shots was low the whole time. And it's like it's not that I doubt I can make the shot, it's just I know myself enough to know like as soon as I need a makeup on steel, it's so easy for me to need two or three makeups on steel because I just let it get off the rails so quick that it's like I was literally shooting to avoid issues instead of shooting to like maximize my potential, you know? It's a completely different mindset shift. And I had the wrong mindset like the whole match. I was just trying to avoid issues instead of trying to maximize what I could do. And I regret that for sure, but it's super easy to sit here now and say, oh yeah, I should have had that attitude. But when you're looking at a 20-yard IPSC plate and you're on deck, it's a lot harder to feel that sense of confidence, you
no,
know?
definitely. I mean, I've done the same thing at matches.
Yeah,
You know?
for sure.
It's just like,
I would say that is the story of my matches, and like learning to push the ceiling of shooting scared higher is kind of
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, this is the power of flying through LaGuardia, New York, where this will I want, well, that's a joke, but I want my default to be the other direction, and I don't know I don't
Mhm.
know if that's the case for you, Jed, or not, like, because I don't know, I haven't shot with you enough and or any of that, but for me, I want my default to be on the other side, so that I want to be able, I want to be battling the other direction. uh where it's like, whoa, okay, you're gonna, you want to shoot those pieces of steel like ping ping, and they're 40-yard mini poppers, and you can't do that. But I want to battle that thought of what they sound like and trying to control myself. I want to try and control myself. I don't have a problem doing that, but that's what I want. So I need to err on the, you know, on the side of the other side,
Yep,
which is exciting.
100%. Yeah, and I kind of need to adjust my aggression in like specific areas too, because it's like I'm at least lately way too willing to send shots on like a marginal sight picture on steel, but nowhere near willing enough to do that on like open paper or bigger partials or stuff like that. So it's like I need to like I need to adjust my focus in certain areas and like give aggression that I have in certain areas over to other places, and then move some caution into other areas. So it's like and then once I do that, then I feel like I can start pushing more. But I need to get those kind of balances correct, and then I feel like I can start pushing
I think that's a
more
high level shooter
towards.
problem. I really do, because, and I won't name names, but if you pick like 10 best current shooters in the world, right? I think we could look at 5 of them, and we could look at variable strategies for steel that they have employed at different matches over the last few years, where they're trying to find that perfect calibration, and they're erring on one side or the other depending on who they are and what's been happening for them. But I can show you people like pausing a beat on steel. Like there is a pause that they are taking because for whatever reason it pays off for them to take that pause. And then I can see other people sort of with a degree of caution or freedom, or conversely, a degree of freedom shooting steel because they've spent too long pausing on it and now they're trying to do something else.
And this shift happens like, so I think it's a very interesting, very common shift that happens, where you'll see people one match do one thing and then shift up and do another thing. I mean, I've shot with some of the people who do the thing one way, and it has burned them so bad so many times that then you see them do a total shift in the opposite direction, and the answer is obviously somewhere in between. But it's interesting, and I get that on steel. Like it's so easy to throw one and then just like, oh no, quick makeups all the time and none of them are hitting.
Yep. Yep. That has been my, because it's like you go through struggles and phases, right? And it's like I feel like that's the current phase that I'm in, and I'm just trying to figure it out. And it's almost like I can I have to be super deliberate about how I program, like how I want to approach that on a stage. And if I do that diligently enough, I can force myself to behave the way I want, but like it takes like and I know that sounds super basic because it's like that's what we're supposed to be doing in a walkthrough, right? But I'm talking like extremely like telling myself over and over and over, like, this is how you're gonna behave here. There is no other choice. You're gonna
So
do
you're
this
saying
at
it's
this,
really
you know
hard
what I mean?
work. It's
Yeah,
really hard
very,
work to deliver
very
the
hard.
execution, to deliver
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
execution you want. I
Exactly.
think that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
mean, I think like most of the time, most of us just aren't willing to do that.
I
You just feel like you'll get a good enough result, like half-assing it. Like even though you care a lot about the result, but like the process just feels a little bit too hard to force yourself to behave in this highly specific way.
Yeah, and you can cover it. Obviously, if you're good enough, you can cover that up most of the time. But unless you want to get a really good result.
Yeah.
Right. You can beat most of the people most of the time just by being better at all of the things. So then you don't have to hold yourself to that standard you're talking about, where you really have to program a specific, I'm not going to say aiming scheme, but like a specific level of commitment to different targets that is not the same. And this is not just sort of blur them all into target shoot.
Hmm.
I mean, I remember multiple times where I'll walk some stages and then go back to the Airbnb or whatever, and I'll be like that. My programming for one specific thing has started because I know it's going to take a long time. Because in whatever fashion it is, whether it's accuracy or speed or something, like I I've had to spend so much time kind of overcoming the hesitation that I'll have or whatever it is ahead of time. And then you get to the stage and then you still have to do more because you're on the stage. Very relatable.
And missing steel in practice for me just doesn't hurt. It's like most of the time, if I'm shooting my own steel, it's static, and I might fire a great quick makeup, but it just doesn't hurt. Versus if I miss the paper, I shoot a run a few times and I know there should be 12 holes, and I count 11, and 2 of them are deltas. Like that hurts. Like I can see it. But like the steel that I sent 5 makeups on in those same strings, I've already forgotten that. Like once, and I haven't found a solution for that. But it's hard
What
to force diligence in training.
So this is something I didn't know if I was going to bring this up tonight, but I planned on talking to you guys about it once you're here or whatever. But so something I've been thinking a lot about is cutting out cardboard popper shapes and calling it purely like because I like it's so easy to get caught up in like shooting for the feedback. I feel like, that I feel like what I want to spend some time doing is shooting cardboard poppers or maybe like cardboard IPSC plates or whatever, and purely shot calling, no feedback, move on. And then it's exactly what you said, like maybe that will make it hurt a little bit more
Yeah.
and that will help you take the training a little more seriously. I don't know.
I've only done it like one time, and that one time was like all I needed to do it.
Really?
Where it was like I set it up, I had a couple paper plates, and I had them in my truck, and like I had a big stack of them, thinking I was going to use all of them, and I like tucked them under my seat. This was like 5 years ago or something, and I put them out one day, and I shot on them, and for whatever, I don't know what it was, but it was like, oh, okay, there was definitely some realization that I had trying that on what I needed to be paying attention to. And obviously, I think that would be good to do again. But yeah, I think it's probably valuable. I think it's like one of those training things where it's like not all the time, but
Yeah.
definitely maybe sometime.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna play with it because I mean that's my current struggle. So I'm gonna play with that a little bit and see. I feel like it would help, but I don't know if I don't know if that's smart or not. So we'll
I
see.
I bet it would force you to pay attention. That's the biggest thing it did for me. It was like, oh, you better pay attention now because you're not going to hear a ding if you don't hit it. You're going to actually have to either attempt to hit it or pay attention enough to know if you didn't hit it. Kind of like in that whole thing.
Yeah.
Uh, we should probably.
How could it hurt? I have to ask real quick. How could it hurt?
I don't think it would.
Yeah, you said like, but I'm not sure how it could hurt. And this is not a very bold take, but it's still mine. I just don't think there's much training you can do. Anyone who takes their training seriously can do that would hurt. Like some of it may or may not end up being productive or useful, but like the way you'll figure that out is by doing it. I just don't think we do things that will make us worse. It's just not a real risk.
Yeah, I definitely in live fire I've experienced like anytime I've shot, I've I feel like that I got something, even though it was like maybe I wasted some rounds because it took me longer to figure something out, but it was still shooting and still getting like understanding, getting better.
Oh yeah. Like lots of it's not very efficient, but I never get the sense that I tried something it didn't work and now I'm worse.
Yeah,
like that just hasn't been my experience.
We don't see people take like go take a rise and then dip back down and stay there because they changed something in their training that was a bad idea. Like usually that's found out pretty quick that something doesn't work, and if you doing that, like I guess if you forgot about time entirely and just started training only points, then
That Yeah, I almost fell into that for a little bit actually. After Carry Optics Nationals, because some of those shots on the partials were intimidating to me, so I did just a ton of like 20, 25 yard like tighter shooting. And I did actually like noticeably fall off of the pace I had been at before for a couple weeks after that. So
yeah,
that was the one point I was gonna say is like I think becoming points focused and losing sight of time is kind of the only way you could really hurt yourself. But I don't know.
So my argument is I don't disagree with you on that. Absolutely. If you do if you sort of become unbalanced in some sense, then there's
Yeah.
real consequences for that. My sort of subtext is that almost everyone who is training, their training is resilient enough that sort of temporary setbacks and errors aren't a real risk. And even when you notice that, you're like, wow, I go to these local matches and I'm off the pace on these simple, uncomplicated targets. And it happens like 2 matches in a row that you can't hose as well or whatever. You recognize that and you go home and you fix it. And whatever you gained in terms of confidence and competence shooting tighter shots at distance, you still have.
Yeah.
And then you brought that back up. I think it's more that maybe it's just me, but I used to hear from people more often, and then I would take on that fear that somehow I'm doing something in dry fire that's going to hurt me. Right? Like I'm training it wrong. And if I don't have the training correct, like I'd be better off not training than training wrong. And I just don't think that's true.
No, I don't.
Like if you're like curious and you have some level of effort, then some of it's not very efficient, but none of it's damaging.
Yeah. The idea like training to like I forget who said it. No, Ben said it on a podcast like a while ago. Was like I want to train everything all of the time, so that, and I think it's to prevent this kind of thing where you get too dug in one direction, where it's like points are everything, but then the next day you're training with only speed focus. But you just said the day before points were everything. But then it's like this constant thing where there's everything circling around. And then you always come to every challenge as well prepared as you could be. At least that's the goal. I think that it's just getting wrapped up in one thing for too long. Like obviously, because
the specific thing with hard shooting, like I've seen that enough that if I'm working on hard shooting, I always have a close open part of the array. Like always, just for me, so that I don't bring like this careful, deliberate, very sort of like dot comes up, dot comes down, dot comes up, dot comes down shooting to everything. I want to always have the context for some shots. All that matters is I make them. And then everything else is the time defend. And I need to get back to that time defend mindset immediately. Yeah, I mean, I understand that risk. But I mean, I think the solution is pretty simple. Give yourself some really, really challenging partials and then bracket them with 5-yard opens and demands that you treat those 5-yard opens the correct way.
As 5-yard opens, yeah. We should probably wrap this up because we have the most important things to do after this.
You're late, Jed. You're late. You better get to your meeting.
Yeah, I haven't even looked at that email very much. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know. I might while I'm awake, I might go see what's going on. I could always leave, right? Unless we're banned from leaving, that you just locked out, you can't leave. All right. Well, I'm going to end the podcast, but we are going to do more of these. I think we're going to try to do some while we're training, like not while we're training, but I think while we have ideas fresh, I think it'd be kind of good to talk about them.
We should do it like with gunfire in the background, like in between runs.
What people want to hear, like
yeah,
it's perfect.
Oh, and I'm not going to have like my big 50 cal can full of all my mags, which is how I go to the range, is I have 600 rounds loaded in magazines, so I don't have to touch a magazine while I'm at the range, unless it's to like insert it back into the gun. I'm not going to be able to do that. So I'm going to have to sit there like a pleb, stuffing rounds into magazines, and that will give me ample time to podcast.
How many mags do you have?
A few.
Not a lot.
I mean, so I mostly use factory mags, and so I've got about 40 of those, and then I've got about 10 with extended base pads.
How long does it take you to load all of them?
I almost exclusively do it while doing something else, so that I don't notice. Yeah. 2 nights ago, I did it while watching Jacob Hetherington's Area 6 and Area 2 videos. That got me to 400 rounds into mags.
Okay.
So whatever that is, 11 minutes, 400 rounds. So if I load all of them and I'm really flying, probably about 18 minutes, 20 minutes.
Yeah. Nice. All right, well, I'll end the podcast now. Bye.